President Donald Trump on Tuesday signed a proclamation further restricting entry to the United States for nationals from countries deemed high risk due to demonstrated persistent and severe deficiencies in screening, vetting, and information sharing that threaten U.S. national security and public safety. Among the 15 additional countries newly subject to partial restrictions is Nigeria. Trump had earlier on October 31st declared Nigeria as a country of particular concern in response to allegations of a Christian genocide in the country. The proclamation continues full restriction and entry limitations on nationals from the original 12 high-risk countries: Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. It also adds full restrictions and entry limitations on 5 additional countries: Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, South Sudan, and Syria. Global Affairs analyst Ejike Okpa joins us now to make sense of this new development. Ejike, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Ejike, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been a supporter sometimes of Trump's policies, so I'm wondering how you assess the inclusion of Nigeria under partial U.S. entry restrictions. Does this, accurately reflect Nigeria's security and vetting challenges, or does it risk oversimplifying a complex situation?
Yeah, good afternoon, good morning for me. It's good to be on your show. Nigerian American, and since the 90s, when you had the military, there was always that State Department issued a travel alert about Nigeria. Now you have a civilian government since 1996. The question that needs to be answered and asked is, how has Nigeria done since 1999 on public safety? Before you look good on the outside, how are you dealing with issues affecting people from your own particular country? These are the things that enable other countries, to push back on Nigeria. It's not just Americans doing this. Even some other West African countries have rejected Nigerians coming into their own country. So if improvements are not being made in Nigeria to give citizens the choice of, the options, because the more options you have in life, the more stability you're going to have of your own citizen. If they want to go, they go because, nobody's forcing them out. But if the conditions are very unbearable as it is in Nigeria, you see the level of people protesting about, working conditions, then other countries are going to look at it and say, we don't want this kind of people here. And so Trump is doing what Trump was elected in November to do, to secure the border, to make sure those who come to America, there's no perfect way to screen people. But at least this thing is measures he's putting in place, he's putting countries on notice. Nigeria is a partial restriction. Whether that partial restriction is going to graduate to something more severe, we don't know. But, this is where the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the President, and the Minister of Information should all come together and begin to issue public statements and engage. Because, coming to another person's country is like a visa. You are being invited as a guest. And you receive a welcome when the host is telling you, come on, I'm invited you. But if you try to force your way in there, the host country is going to push back and is going to kick back. So I'm hoping that this is an encouraging thing for the Nigerian government to get on the drawing board and do something about making Nigerians feel comfortable and wanting to stay back in their own country of birth before they go somewhere else.
Okay, I'll quote you there. We don't want these kinds of people here. But I'm wondering what this does for the relationship between Nigeria and the U.S., particularly when it comes to security cooperation like we were hoping for, as we saw from weeks from before with Riley Moore here. And then there's trade, and then there's counterterrorism. What does this do to that relationship?
Well, he puts it in jeopardy because obviously it wasn't an improvement, even though the congressman came. The congressman, it wasn't a high-powered, he was a chairman of a subcommittee. It wasn't a powered, high-level delegation, not to undermine, what they came to do. But the point is that, I think the highest government official to come to U.S. since this allegation of genocide in Nigeria is the National Security Advisor. The Minister of Defense or the President himself, who should have sought an audience with Trump and because that is head of state to head of state. But if if you send in your own, I don't want to say, lesser important people, then America will look at it that you don't take this thing seriously, that it doesn't mean anything to you. So by now, Tinubu should have, sought attention, come to Washington, D.C. or call the president. I mean, you don't have to physically come, make a phone call. Say, hey, Mr. President, can we have a conversation? Can we talk about this?
But Ejike, let me stop you there. Doesn't that seem like that's exactly what the U.S. president wants? That there be some sort of concession by the Nigerian president. And from before, we thought that this was going into a security partnership, and all of a sudden it seems that we've been placed on this restriction, and that relationship is not going to go anywhere. Talking about counterterrorism now.
Well, I mean, look, agreements doesn't take effect until an agreement is made. Like I said, there have been parties meeting and exchanging visits and talking about stuff. What I'm saying is, if Tinubu had called, I don't think Trump would have rejected. Maybe he did, and he didn't get to the sort of response.
But at what expense? At what expense is what we must ask as Nigerians? The president has to ask, at what expense would this be if he is to concede and come over, have a talk? We've seen this happen with other African countries. We've seen the kind of a trade.
Don't make it a continental issue. This is about Nigeria. You see what other countries have done. You see, Netanyahu, for instance, you know how many times he's gone. It doesn't mean one visit. It's going to, give you all you want. There's going to be consistency of it. There's going to be frequency of it. So what I'm saying is that I don't know what Tinubu has done. His Minister of Foreign Affairs hasn't been, Nigeria don't even have an ambassador to U.S. And so there are so many gaps. But when you send somebody like, the National Security Advisor, who doesn't even amount to the level of a cabinet level position in America. I think if you're talking about a secretary of a department in America, you're talking to an equivalent level of that person is a minister in Nigeria of similar department. So if you're sending all these other people, then Americans or the president himself say, well, obviously Nigeria don't think this is a significant thing for them, and you just move on to something else. Mm-hmm. So again, efforts have to be made, and those efforts, the thing is, what is the outcome? What is it producing us? Sometimes you can even use what I consider a backdoor channel to see who else knows this president, who else can get there on your behalf and pitch something. There's a book I always tell people to go read. It's called Making Your Case. Everything is a case, but how you make it is what differentiates you from the noise, and until you are able to be effective in the things that affect you, that damage your public relations capital, because Nigeria public relations capital is constantly being damaged, even from things that happen at home and the things that happen from outside. But then the question needs to be, what is Nigeria leadership doing? That's the question.
Big question there. And I do agree with you that Nigeria might need its PR sorted. But let's zoom out of Nigeria. Let's talk about the region. Let's talk about especially the Sahel region now. From that perspective, how might the addition of countries like Niger, Mali, and also Burkina Faso, which are under full restriction, how will that affect the West African stability and U.S. engagement in the Sahel?
Well, I mean, I don't even know what country U.S. has a favorable relationship with. I think maybe Liberia or Senegal. But, if 4 countries or 5 countries out of the 15 member nation of West ECOWAS have already have a military rule, what does that say about stability? So that region, the West African region, obviously is unstable. So, the governments that are in that region or the governments of those regions are not doing things to give their people a peace of mind. Remember, we live in a global village, but we still have individual countries, and individual countries owe themselves the responsibility to make sure the first call of duty is for your own citizens. How are they feeling there? Are they comfortable with you? Is there a trust factor? Is there transparency? Yes, transparency is not 100% in any country, but at least is it at a level where the citizens feel, okay, our president or our military head of state is doing something for us. It's always about the people before it's about the foreigners. Nigeria seems to be very concerned about what the foreigners think or what the foreigners come to do there, while their own people are suffering. You look around Nigeria today, who do you see? Who do you see doing things for Nigeria? Lebanese, Nigerians, Indians. Where are the Nigerians themselves? Do Nigerians actually feel that they own their own country? The biggest public works contract given to in Nigerian history is a Lebanese contractor who doesn't even live in Nigeria. Well, no, I want to get to the West African side.
Oh, okay, real quick, please.
You go to the West African side, what is going on? The Chinese are now building the ECOWAS headquarters. So if people are building for you, what are you doing for yourself?
Good question.
You want to build for yourself, you don't want to be built for. So how do you talk about local capacity, you talk about building capacity for your people, and other people are doing it for you. So why should China come into West Africa and build ECOWAS headquarters?
Okay, Ejike, real quick. Apart from grovel, what can the Nigerian president do to make the situation better?
What Nigerian president, he has to be proactive. He has to get in front of issues. He should stop using his surrogates. He should stop having people like Bayo and Onuga and Sunday Dere and all these other people speak. He should be the one get in front of the microphone. In America, when things happen, there's in the White House says the room called the Situation Room. Get in front of it and speak to the Nigerians. None of your ministers matters in this case. When people think of Nigeria under this administration, they're thinking of Tinubu. What is Tinubu doing? Because at the end of the day, most people are not going to remember all who these ministers are. They're going to remember the president. And so what did the president do? Like we say in America, all buck stops at the desk of the president. What he should do, he should be proactive. He should speak with Nigerians, not talk at Nigerians through his surrogates. It doesn't get him any political capital. I'm sorry to say that. If he wants to see Trump, he should make the phone call there. Every president in the world, they exchange phone call numbers. They call each other, call him, and then the president will answer and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" So let me even give you something.
We are out of time. My apologies, Ejike. I would have loved to have you.
Thank you.
But maybe we could have you on a different show where we have plenty of time to discuss this, perhaps maybe over the weekend. That would be Breakfast Extra. I hope you would accept that invitation.
Thank you, and let us swap what we're wearing. I take your jacket and your suit, and then you take my T-shirt.
Ejike, we'll have to get that through customs first, and I wonder if Trump is going to allow that. But thank you very much, Ejike.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.